everyone, welcome back to Alice on the Giant Bookshelf. Today's video is all about the books that I've read so far in February. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And so far in February I have managed to read only a couple of my giant TBR, but I've also read quite a bit for the Booktube Prize, and so let's see what I've read so far this month. We're just over halfway through February and I've read 7 books. I have started an awful lot of other books that I'm partway through, so we'll talk about those in a bit. Apologies today if you can hear loud sounds. We're in the middle of a storm here and it's very, very windy outside, so I don't know if the mic is going to pick up those noises. Anyway, the first book that I read in February was The Promise by Damon Galgut, and I'm not going to talk about this one here because it's a Booktube Prize book, so I have to wait until after the judging. The second book that I read was my reread of Death on the Nile. I read this with Christy Fest and we had a great discussion of this one. It's definitely up there, probably in my top 10 Christies. I am interested to see the new Death on the Nile film, but I won't be going to the cinema to see it, so I've got a little bit of time to wait. But from what I've heard so far, it does sound like they've changed a bit and, as usual, not got Poirot quite right, but never mind. This is a really good book by Agatha Christie. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a book to start with if you haven't read any of her others yet, but because there's quite a lot of build-up in this book, I wouldn't say any murders take place until we're at least 100 pages in, maybe more. It has quite a slow burn, but there's a lot of interesting character background in that time, so a great book and I really enjoyed the reread. Next up I read another Booktube Prize book, The Prophets, which I will talk about at a later date. And actually the next book that I finished after that was also a Booktube Prize book, China Room. So those are the 3 Booktube Prize books that I've read so far, and I'm not able to talk about those just yet. Next up I finished my 2-month-long, it was supposed to be, but we've gone ahead a bit. This was a buddy read with Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures and also Loretta from Read Write Collage, and we've been reading this throughout January, a couple of chapters each weekend, and it's been fantastic reading a thriller like that. But if it wasn't for the amount of other books I've been reading, I definitely wouldn't have been able to stick to that schedule. And as it was, we actually finished this maybe one or 2 weekends early. It's a really good read. So this is Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. This is soon going to be having an adaptation, I believe, on Netflix, and I'm really excited to see that now that I've read the book. It's one of Karen Slaughter's standalones, which are always very enjoyable but always very gory. And this one did have its moments of a sort of graphic violence and gore, but not maybe as many moments as some of Slaughter's other books. So that's a point to note for this one. This one follows the lives of Laura Oliver and her daughter Andrea. And at the beginning they are caught up in a shooting, and the way that Laura, who's the mother, behaves is very surprising to Andrea. And to not give any spoilers, Andrea sort of ends up on the run. She's not the shooter, by the way, but Andrea ends up on the run for another reason, and this is in split timeline with a backstory as well for another character called Jane. And Jane is a really, really interesting character, and I don't want to say any more because I don't want to spoil this book. It is a really gripping thriller with lots of great things to recommend about it. Really, really like the characters in this. Slaughter is great at characters, and yeah, it had a really excellent plot as well. So a great read and a great buddy read. Next I finished another group read, which was Anne of Avonlea. I actually had to buy a second copy. I think it was £2 or £3 for it, but I managed to just over halfway through reading this copy, which I had bought second hand, I discovered that it very suddenly went from page 262, which I was really enjoying, to a second copy of pages 87 to 116, I think it was. 118, and then back to page 295, so I had a couple of chapters missing. So in the middle of reading this, I had to purchase another copy, and I decided to get a new one this time, and I bought this edition, which is very, very beautiful. Anne of Avonlea. I was reading this with the Analong, which is run by Emily at Novell Novels and Gemma at Read a Book Gem, and this was lovely, and I love talking to the others in that group about the Anne books. I didn't think I would be able to enjoy a sequel as much as I'd enjoyed Anne of Green Gables, because Anne of Green Gables was just so good, but this really surprised me. It was absolutely excellent and definitely a worthy sequel to Anne of Green Gables. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series along with the Analong group. It was great to check back in with Anne, who's now 16 years old in this one, and follow her life in Avonlea as she embarks upon being a school teacher at her old school, and gets up to all sorts of adventures, including with some brilliant new characters, Davy and Dora, who are twins adopted by Marilla, who Anne lives with. And this book was just in parts hilarious, in parts sad. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, and L.M. Montgomery has, if this book is anything to go by, written an excellent series about Anne. The final book that I've finished so far this month, I finished yesterday, and it's confession time again. This was another new book, whoops, and this was a present from my husband for Valentine's Day, so he did very, very well. And this is The Couple at the Table by Sophie Hannah. I've been looking forward to this book for a really long time because it was going to revisit some of Sophie Hannah's characters who I really have enjoyed reading their books before, DC Simon Waterhouse and Sergeant Charlie Zayler, who are just excellent characters. I am going to be doing a full review of this one for my recent release reviews series, and yeah, this was fabulous, so I'll be making that video shortly. So yeah, I won't say a lot more about that one here because it's going to have its own full review. Let's have a quick look at what I'm reading at the moment, because I'm reading quite a lot. So I'm currently reading, I say I'm currently reading this, but I've only managed to read one chapter of My Cousin Rachel because I just haven't had time with all the other commitments. So this has been on the back burner a bit, unfortunately. I'm a bit behind on Sandy's 1001 book club read. This is a book club run by Ms. Reads a Lot, and I'll link her channel below as well as all the other channels I've mentioned. And we're reading The Sea by Iris Murdoch, and I'm a bit behind the group, but I am currently in History 2. This is broken into histories rather than chapters, so I'm in History 2 and I've got up to page 156, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this one turns out and carrying on with this one. Also, partway through Wolf Hall, which I've been reading with the Wolf Hall Along, run by Emily at Novell Novels, Marissa at Blatantly Bookish, and Tori at Hufflepuff Discovery. I'll link them in the description down below as well. And we've been reading Wolf Hall since January, and I should be a bit further along with this. I think at least one person in the group has finished, but I am just over halfway through, probably 3/4 of the way now, and I'm really, really enjoying this one. It's excellent. I'm also playing catch up a little bit with this one, which was the Eclectic Book Club choice this month. The Eclectic Book Club was a book club run by Shelly and David. That's Shelly Swearingen and David Wiley, who I'll link in the description down below. Sadly, the book club is finishing after this read, but it's been a wonderful book group to be part of, and I read the Odyssey and the Iliad with them, and also Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And I've absolutely loved this book group, so thank you so much, Shelly and David, for bringing this book club together and for all the great discussions we've had. We're currently reading The Acts of King Arthur. I'm way behind due to the other things that I've been reading, the Booktube Prize and so on. This is by John Steinbeck, and it's his version of the King Arthur tales basically, and I have only read actually in this the first story, which is about Merlin, but I'm looking forward to catching up with the group and reading the rest, and I'm hoping to work on this one a little bit at the weekend. And almost the final thing that I'm currently reading is The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, which I'm reading with the lovely Mitzi at Mitzi Reads and Writes and Art at Bookshelf Odyssey. Again, we've been having fantastic discussions on this, and I've absolutely loved reading this book with them. We will actually be finishing this today. It's a fantastic book of short stories, all tied together by the theme of a man who has illustrations all over his body, and the illustrations tell these tales, which is a really interesting concept for a book. This is my second Ray Bradbury after Fahrenheit 451, and I am so enjoying this and definitely going to check out some of his other short stories, and I think I'll probably read The Martian Chronicles next. So I'll talk about this one a bit more when I've finished it, but it has been a wonderful buddy read and I expect to finish it today. Editing Alice here. I forgot to mention one more book that I'm currently reading, which is actually a book I'm currently listening to, and my audiobook this month so far has been The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, and I'm really enjoying it. I've got about 14 hours left, so I'm about probably 8 hours in. This was recommended to me by Jack over at Spread Bookjoy, who couldn't speak highly enough about it, and also the lovely Gem of Books had just listened to it on audio and said it was great too. So on the back of those two's advice, I have taken a foray into fantasy, and I'm loving it so far. I'm not really a fantasy reader, but I would really like to be. So yeah, I'll let you know how I get on with that one. It's a really enjoyable audiobook so far. So those are all of my books I've read so far in February, and also the ones that I am currently reading. Please do let me know in the comments down below what you've been reading this month and whether you've been enjoying it. I'm having a really good time with my reads this month. I've got 2 more of my Booktube Prize books out of the library ready to read, so I may make a start on one of those this weekend as well. And yeah, it's been a really good February so far. Hope you're all well. Please do give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Harry and I are going to cozy up with some books as it's so stormy outside today, and I'll hope to see you all again soon in another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.